finally, Project TV.
Welcome to MMPTV, where we tell the untold story of those united across the struggle to put people first. I'm Audra Trainham, and you're watching a weekly update. Today, we will be talking about the new city and state budgets. We're going to hear how working families and communities are being impacted by proposed cuts to our public services and safety net. We will also get the chance to hear how Philadelphia-based institutions and corporations are contributing to the growing gap in the budget. To get a better understanding of what's going on, we recently sat down with Stan Shapiro. Stan has done extensive research and writing about the financial situation in Philadelphia, as well as the city's latest response to the budget crisis. Let's take a look. We'd like to welcome Stan Shapiro. Stan, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm the Vice Chair of Neighborhood Networks and the co-coordinator of Move On. I spent 22 years as Chief Staff Attorney for Philadelphia City Council.
Okay. All right, well, let's talk about the situation right now. What is a little bit about the financial situation that Philadelphia is facing right now?
Well, it's a very interesting and troubling situation. The mayor is claiming out of kind of one side of his mouth that everything is hunky-dory, that there aren't any tax increases needed, that the budget is pretty much balanced, that he's not going to have to continue to cut services, which he did over the last few years. He says that the school district does need some help, so in the process of changing the real estate tax system, he's hoping to squeeze out a little bit more money for the school district. But other than that, nobody needs to worry about anything. But oh, by the way, he says out of the other side of his mouth, the state and federal governments are getting ready to crush us. And he actually provides statistics in his 5-year plan that the state is going to cut $40.9 million out of Health and Human Services, $24 million of federal money for HIV/AIDS programs would be cut. There might be an increase of 50% in the number of people who are on our streets. And that's just a snapshot of some of the issues that will be caused by cutbacks in state services. Also, our housing funds are being cut back by the federal government, about 25%. But those are things that are normally funded by other governments, and basically the mayor said, nothing we can do about that. We just have to tolerate it. And he's of course right. The state and federal governments should not be cutting these things, and it's awful, and we should fight those cutbacks. But that still leaves us the question of what happens if they're not going to restore those cuts. At the same time that these catastrophic budgets are coming from Harrisburg and Washington, the mayor wants to give more tax cuts to business to the tune of $160 million over the next 5 years.
So what that basically says is that more working families will be struggling.
We're going to have more dead-end schools where kids aren't educated, so that they have an alternative that enables them to have a future. Temple University is being cut by 30 to 40%. I mean, it's like a tornado is getting ready to set down on the city of Philadelphia, and the mayor and probably city council are saying, not our problem. Let's cut taxes for business.
I want to talk a little bit about, I think you mentioned this earlier when you were talking about housing. Yeah. I've heard a little bit about the property tax reassessment. I don't know if you could talk a little bit about some insight that you might have on what that actually means for Philadelphia.
The proposal is to raise money that is desperately needed for the school district. Definitely the school district needs money, but it is important to look at how the money is being raised. If those increases for the school district come at the expense of poor people living in areas where they can barely get by as is, then that's not the right way to raise it.
Like, why don't we go to corporations and institutions and ask them to pay their fair share?
Well, we should be doing that. And there was a point where The University of Pennsylvania and some of the hospitals that are tax exempt, even though they do very well by themselves, we're actually contributing a little bit of money in lieu of the real estate taxes that they're exempt from paying. We need to put pressure on them to resume those payments.
Are there any other ways of generating revenue to ensure that we can meet the needs of our Philadelphia families and our communities?
Well, we ought to look at that business tax. We've been cutting business taxes in the city of Philadelphia since 1996. The gross receipts tax has been cut by 54% in that period of time, supposedly to bring in new business to the city. But I just checked the statistics this morning, and unemployment in Philadelphia with all this business tax cutting is at 10.1%. Unemployment is out of control in Philadelphia while we've been cutting business taxes.
Right. So you're talking a little bit, you're talking about some of the possible solutions or some alternatives, but I want to get your thoughts a little bit about some of the alternative or solutions that the city government has actually been putting out. This new bill to eliminate business tax for hedge fund managers and companies as a way of creating jobs and increasing the revenue that's going to be coming into the city. Right. What exactly are your thoughts on that? Because it's at a time where it's really hard to find a job, and this sounds like it's going to create jobs in the city. So,
well, they always talk about how giving money to the 1% is going to trickle down. That's basically trickle-down theory writ large. Where are our public officials placing their priorities in terms of their own time and attention? That's a resource that we pay for. Should they be focusing on speculative benefits that might trickle down to the rest of us sooner or later? Or should they be analyzing some of the things that we've talked about in the rest of this discussion? How to protect people against property tax increases that will maybe threaten their houses. How can they make the gross receipts tax possibly apply even more effectively to big businesses? Let's have the folks who work at City Council and in the mayor's office spend some time thinking about that.
We talked about a lot of things today.
Right.
What are some of the key points people should take away from this?
We have to look at more than just the basic city services, which the mayor and council often want us to focus on when they discuss what the appropriate tax rates are going to be. And so, is it enough that we're not cutting police, that we're not cutting fire stations this year? Or is it appropriate at this point to also talk about things that are really necessary to hold us together as a society? The people who are hardest hit by the economic problems that we're having in the city are facing a catastrophe headed our way from the federal and state governments, and our government has to step up and step up in a fair way, not by giving more tax breaks to rich corporations and rich individuals, but by making them pay their fair share.
So pretty much what you're saying is that the city government should stop putting the people that pretty much created this crisis on a pedestal and start creating policies that actually put people first in Philadelphia.
Exactly right.
We would like to thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much. It was really...
Thanks so much.
Okay, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
A lot of information that I'm sure is going to help out a lot of people.
Great.
Thanks for coming.
Great. Sure.
Stan provided a lot of clarity about the financial situations here in Philadelphia and how it's connected to what's happening at the state and federal level. We are living in a time when families and communities are being asked to sacrifice basic needs and watch our public goods get dismantled. How is it possible that major corporations and institutions in this city aren't contributing anything? This points to a deeply rooted problem of inequality, and there's just no reason why all our basic needs can't be met. That's why it's time we begin to work together towards a whole new vision of what's possible. It's going to take a lot of us, but together it's possible to create solutions needed to address this growing divide between the rich and the rest of us. Right now, Pennsylvania is not putting people first. That's why MMP has launched the Put People First campaign, which is all about putting people's basic needs first, such as quality health care, quality education, affordable housing, and jobs that pay a living wage. MMP wants to hear from you and others across the state to tell these untold stories. We want to connect people and places around Pennsylvania so that we can work together to put people first in our state. To fill out a survey or tell your story, contact stories@putpeoplefirstpa.com. Stay tuned on PhillyCam, Facebook, and MediaMobilizing.org. I'm Audra Trainham, and thanks for watching MMPTV.
Media Mobilizing Project TV.